So, welcome to the complete digital photography process with Jim DiVitale. My name is Brenda Hipsher with X-Rite Photo, and I'm co hosting today's program with Wes Maggio of Wacom. We are just delighted to welcome the great Jim DiVitale to the webinar program today. Jim has been not only a good friend and a colleague here in the industry for a long time, but he has been an Atlanta commercial advertising photographer and instructor for over 30 years. Specializing in computer photo illustration, he's a PPA master photographer, master of electronic imaging, photographic craftsman, fellow of the American Society of Photographers, on Team Nick. He's an on-one master, a Canon Explorer of Light, and part of our X-Rite Colorado program. Jim also serves as Director of Education for the Digital Imaging Institute for Science and Medicine and has lectured on digital photography before audiences at Photoshop World, Imaging USA, Photo Plus Expo, APA, ASMP, WPPI, and many other places. You can view Jim's portfolio and digital imaging blog at www.divitalephotography.com. The address is right there on your screen. Now, folks, you are in for a wild ride today. So let's get started. We're going to switch the screen over to Jim, and away we're going to go.
I am waiting to see my switch. There we go. Show my screen. Here we go. And we are hopefully, are we on air? We're all set?
We're all set. Take it
Okay,
away.
well, all right. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm so honored that all of you are joining me today. This is something I've been trying to plan with Wacom and X-Rite for a while, and just trying to get the schedule straight with all the teaching and things going on. It's always hard to schedule, so I'm finally glad we can get this done. Brenda's been an incredible help, along with Wes and his team with Wacom, to make all these things and to be able to reach so many people at one time. Today's program I'm titling The Complete Digital Photography Process, because we're going to cover quite a lot of different things relating to capturing in digital and really getting the complete process from start to finish covered. Not just color management and technical things in Photoshop, but just the whole process from exposure to archiving. Let's see what we can do. Just to show you a few pictures of what I do over the years. I've been doing this over going on 35 years. I come from a traditional large format, 8x10, 4x5 background in commercial product photography. Back in school, we worked a lot in, back in the middle 70s, the emphasis, of course, was on like the zone system in black and white. And today's color management is very much like the same type of problems and issues we were dealing with back then for zone system is what we're dealing with color management now. Being able to pre-visualize an image, being able to have consistency and be able to repeat it over and over again exactly the same way. I've done quite a lot of really large catalogs, and I come from a background where I over the years have done as many as a couple of dozen 1,000-page catalogs, where you're shooting the middle of the catalog and the first part of it's on press and the last part hasn't been designed yet. So continuity and pulling all this together so that everything looks like it was shot on the same day, even though it might have taken 4 months of work every day with a team of 5 photographers to get it right. We have to make every picture look like one person did it and it was done on the same day. That's the ultimate goal, is the consistency here. I do a lot of illustrative work and agency and design work for various corporations and things, and I take on a lot of pro bono things, anything that really just interests me in photography. So it really changes everything from architecture to product photography to photo illustration. And the color management and the tools that I use to do all this are so very, very important for the whole process. Now, I call this, I should say, digital photography breaks down into 4 parts that have to work together very carefully. Capture. We're going to get the image on the screen. I don't care if you're using a digital SLR, point and shoot, a digital camera back. We have to capture the image. Then we have process. Processes could be a proprietary process from the camera's manufacturer. It could be Lightroom or Photoshop Camera Raw. It could be a third party like Capture One. There's so many different ways to do it, but the key thing is we're going to shoot raw files, and we're going to shoot them the right way to start. We're not going to say, don't worry about that, we're going to fix it in Photoshop. We're going to act like there is no Photoshop when we're shooting and processing. Photoshop is our enhancement, not our fix-it file. Of course, we do fix problems we can't do any other way, but it's not the don't worry about moving that. We'll move it later in Photoshop. Don't give yourself that extra work. Output, such a big deal. And a lot of times when I'm doing programs, I'll ask the audience, how many people here find that every single time they see something on their screen and they get it exactly right, that the output is perfect each time? Well, very few people always raise their hands, but the ones who raise their hands are the ones that are totally color managed from top to bottom, not just doing a custom white balance or just doing a display calibration. I mean the whole package. That's the way to get it right. The last part, which people don't always put in there, is archive. I'm a very firm believer of properly archiving. Yes, I believe in hard drives, but yes, I also believe in write once media. So one copy of, or at least 2 copies go onto multiple disks that we'll talk about later on in the program, how we go through archiving. But you definitely have to have things stored in like 3 different places, because hard drives fail, disks can fail, anything can fail, and you always have to act like you're going to need it again, because a client may just need it again. Calibration is so important with the whole thing. It's about the camera, the monitor, and the printer. I think of this as 3 foreign countries trying to talk to each other with an international business deal, but nobody knows what the other one is saying, because every device in digital photography is what we refer to as device-dependent color. It's kind of speaking its own language. So we have to teach the camera what the monitor and the printer, you have to teach them what they're saying to each other. So that's where the calibration and custom profiling comes in. That's sort of like the interpreter that lets the monitor know what the camera is talking and gets that translation from digital information that the camera talks in to what the monitor talks in, and then especially how does it work out to your specific printer with your set of inks and your specific paper that you work on. I use a whole host of different products by X-Rite. The simplest ones in the entry level is basically the Color Monkey display. You don't have to talk people into saying, no, everybody needs to have a colorimeter, and that's fine. And this is an entry level one that you can work with, put it on your monitor, your laptop, does perfectly what it needs to do. But you can also take it up a step with the Color Monkey, which I think is really in a really good price point for if somebody needs to do just a little bit of everything, including their printer and their monitor and so forth. You're able to do that with the Monkey. One of the ones I take on location with me a lot is the i1 Display Pro, and this is one we'll have a deal that Brenda has for you today. This one, reason why this one is a little different is it uses the higher end software, and that really makes a big difference on how that software works to get everything calibrated. But of course, the one we use mostly in the studio is going to be the i1 Photo Pro 2, which is the newest version of their spectrophotometer kit, and basically can do everything. They'll do the printer, the monitor, the scanners, RGB printer, basically everything we need to do here in the studio we can get done with this one. Now, for me, my studio, in my workspace, I'm working with lots of different devices. So I'm working with half a dozen different monitors. I'm sliding around from one computer. Every computer has something it's doing. But you have to have them all talking to each other. They're all, of course, on the same network, but they have to have the same color management so that everything works. So when in the studio, of course, for my control, I've been a big user of the Wacom technology basically since I've been in computers. Anything less, if you're using a mouse like in Photoshop, that's basically trying to draw with soap on a rope. You have no control over that. And it took me a while to get over the fact of trying to move from a mouse to a tablet. And one of the Wacom salespeople saw me on stage one day and said, "You look like you're struggling up there. Let me tell you how you need to do it." He says, "Just hide your mouse for a week and get that tablet out and start working with it, and you'll find that your right hand will constantly be grabbing for that mouse that's not there. And the first day you'll reach and you'll hit, there's nothing there, and you'll want to reach for it. You'll just break that habit. And then when you eventually start working with the pen, then you are really going to have the control for clipping paths, for selections, for airbrushing. You're going to have everything you need to. And what I love about them now is they really thought about us poor left-handers, and they made these things switchable so we can go left hand or right hand with these things, which was, for me, it's very, very important. Now, when I'm trying to really be creative, this is my home device. This is this Wacom Cintiq, and this is the newest version, the 24 HD. And this guy, they finally made this thing more comfortable for me to work with because it literally comes down and it has a really heavy 80-pound base on it, and this thing comes down and into your lap so that you can work in a very, very comfortable position. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to get profiled with the i1 Photo Pro 2, And when I bring that on here and get my setup here, it's going to be going through all the different colors on the monitor. Now what it's doing is the software knows exactly what these colors should be. They're generated by the software program. It reads that information, looks at what it's actually getting, and compares it to what it knows it should have. And that's the difference. It knows that a red should be this red and a green should be this green. Now, the problem with just doing regular custom white balancing and saying, oh, my grays look good, you can get your grays to look good, but when the grays are good, is the blue the right blue? Is the red the right red? Is it exactly the right red? Because if I'm doing a Coca-Cola shot or a Mizuno blue shot and they have a certain color blue, it's going to look across the board the right kind of blue all the time. I can't be giving them different shades, and that's where the calibration really, really comes in. So we're comparing what we are getting to what we what the machine or the software and spectrophotometer knows we should get, and it writes that custom profile, puts it in the right place, and you are done. And then you do this maybe once a month just to double check things. In the old days of the CRT monitors, we had to do them almost every week, but now we do them on the nicer monitors and the Wacom Cintiq. We only have to do that maybe once a month just to double check it. Now, moving to the camera, this is something that changed everything for me. Is yes, we could always do the printer, we could do the monitor, but the camera was basically the way the camera is. And yes, you do a custom white balance. Yes, you know all that is done. But now, because every device is device-dependent color, we can calibrate the camera. Now that's not new. Calibration of the camera has been around, but it's never been this easy before. So earlier versions of calibrating cameras was really, really difficult to get right, and they made profiles, but I didn't necessarily think they were that much better. This really nails it, because I found something out as in working is when I do a custom profile with the color checker passport, I'm taking my specific camera, which here I'm using the Canon 1DS Mark III in the studio lighting with Pro Photo lighting, and I'm going to shoot this guy, and it's going to literally align these colors exactly right for my specific camera chip. Now this means that what happens when I go in and apply this, let's go ahead and just move forward here. I'm of course working tethered. We're shooting to calibrated monitors. We're looking literally right, using just the basic Canon software to bring the image in, because I'm not processing here. All I'm doing is correctly bringing the image into the computer, and the Canon software does exactly what I need to do. Control my shutter speed, my f-stops, my white balance, what type of, am I shooting raw, am I shooting to the card, to the camera, where is the file going when I shoot it. I shoot this picture, save it as a DNG, and I drop this DNG right into the Color Passport software. It automatically finds the corners, places this green box on all these colors, and it says, not only do we have to do a custom white balance, but when we are in the perfect gray, and my 18% gray is exactly right, is that brown, or is that purple, or is that yellow and blue? Are those colors exactly where they need to be? And if not, it writes sort of like a preset for that. And now I find that when I bring this into Photoshop, into Adobe Camera Raw, and I go over to the Camera tab, Calibration tab, you'll see the specific calibration. It uses the EXIF data of the camera to literally, to basically tell it that I know what camera you are, and puts that information in the places in Lightroom and in Adobe Camera Raw, wherever it needs to put it, it puts it right there. So there it is. If I hit that on the front end, meaning the first thing I'm going to do is pre-process my file. Before I do anything else, I'm literally going to pick the processing style. So if I pick my one for the camera, and of course for some of them I have one for tungsten, one for strobe, and maybe one for sunshine, get really elaborate with different profiles. And by hitting that on the front end, this is the point, I find myself not having to move those sliders around on that front tab very, very little, because everything is sort of snapped into place to start with. So when I'm in the studio shooting images, I am always working tethered when I can be. I have, whether you're working for a laptop, of course, it's going to be profiled as well. I like using these orange cords. I get these at tethertools.com, and these really help me see in the dark better. Another thing I'm doing a lot now is also shooting wirelessly, in a sense, wireless to the computer by using the Cam Ranger with a short little wire that goes from the camera to the Cam Ranger. I can shoot to my iPad. And here I've got my color checker set up here, and we're literally seeing the images that are on the card letting me control everything I could possibly do without having to be tied to a computer. And I can have this over where the client is, and we can do all the controls, see the live video, all that kind of fun stuff, and be able to see all the raw files that I have actually on the card. Now, when I'm going to go ahead and do a profiling talking about the working for the printer, I open it up in the print mode, and I am a firm believer, and this is something I've just really discovered in the last year. I was always being a little, I won't say being cheap, but I'm being easy on myself and not printing up as many patches as I thought maybe is the maximum amount. Like I was maybe doing 800 patches on a read, and I would get very, very good results. But as you find in color management, I call it a practice. You know how we have the medical practice, we have the law practice? Well, we have the color management practice. The good thing is we don't have to be color management experts. I mean, I don't even consider myself an expert. I consider myself a good color management practitioner. The experts are the people that write the software and you know, can do these numbers and know exactly what everything is doing. I know how to use this to make my clients' work come out perfect every time. So here I am. I'm going to print out 1,600 patches. This allows me to, coming out of the machine, this allows me to read, and it takes a little more time to read it because you're reading 1,600 patches instead of 400 or 800, but having this many color variations really nails this down exposure-wise more. If you've ever found that you did everything with your color management right, but you still were getting a little bit darker prints, or because our CRT monitors are really too light, too bright, I find by doing the 1,600 patches, I'm really getting the brightness down to a science, and I'm getting exactly what I need to see on the screen. So basically, you're reading the patches, and as you're reading them, you're coming into the software, and it's sort of comparing again, what am I exactly getting compared to what the software knows I need to have. So as it goes through there, it's reading them, and it gets to the very end. It says you're finally done, and then you save the profile. In this case, it's for my Canon Pro 1 printer, and I would probably type in. I need to type in which type of paper that I'm using here. Also, if you're working with any kind of projection system, this is very important to be able to project correctly. If you're going to sell large wall portraits and you're having a projection room, how can you not have this absolutely calibrated? And these devices do that as well, so that what I see on my screen is exactly as close as I can possibly get to what I need to have. Now, moving into Photoshop, there's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, about where to print and the settings in your color settings for printing. Right off the bat, if you set your settings to North American Prepress 2, this is not the standard default setting at all. This allows us to get very, very close. At least it aligns things to a really, really good starting place where then we make accurate decisions based on the type of work that we're going to do. We can then pick our working space. We have Adobe 1998. We have sRGB, which is the default setting. We have the Pro Photo RGB, and then we also have Color Match RGB, which is a space that I use a lot. Each one of these has a real important part and does, has a good place in the system. Adobe 1998, good for good inkjet prints, good portraiture, good all-around basic photography for Photoshop. sRGB, specifically designed really for going to the web. It's a basic default profile, but I find it's really meant for PCs that are going to the web, very generic, and I find that I only do this when I know that the project's specifically going to web, because I want it to look good on the world's unprofiled monitors. Pro Photo RGB is a huge color space that's has very, very expanding limits, but once you go down to what you have to see on the monitor, what you have to print, you are going to clipping some of that color. So I only would use Pro Photo RGB when I'm doing kind of fine art and want to get the most possible separation going on. Color Match RGB, and I know that's probably the one that says, well, who the heck uses that anymore? Let me tell you, that is the one that you will get dead on for CMYK conversions. If you can make it look great in Color Match RGB, when you convert to CMYK, you will practically see no change to the image at all, and you will nail that color. So all the images I deliver for reproduction is going out in Color Match RGB. You want to be able to preserve the embedded profiles. A profile and a color space is not attached to a raw file until it is processed out of Adobe Camera Raw or any proprietary processing system into a usable pixel-based file that you're going to work on in like a TIFF or so far in a Photoshop file in Adobe Photoshop. So if it's already been processed into a color space, like such as, oh my God, I'm already in sRGB, I should have been in, I wish I could have been back in Pro Photo, you don't gain anything by going from sRGB out to Pro Photo after it's already been processed. So I usually say just preserve the embedded profiles. If you get it right to start with, great. If you don't, you're better off keeping what you have, because you're going to then change it to another profile by the time you go out to your output device. Conversion options as far as the intent, relative colorimetric versus perceptual. Perceptual is really good for pleasing color. Pleasing color meaning I want a good portrait. I'm not worrying about if anything was out of gamut and it had to go into a smaller printing space. I'm not worried about the colors shifting ever so slightly. I want them all to be very separate from each other. That's for perceptual. Relative colorimetric is for exact color for me, because everything that's inside the gamut itself will not be moved by anything trying to be clipped off or coming in. So if 99% of my image falls within the actual gamut, then the last part gets clipped off or comes to its nearest color, it's not going to shift any of my other colors. So when I'm delivering photography for advertising purposes, I'm always going to be using relative colorimetric. Now let's take an image, a basic image that has a lot of nice color in it, and we're going to go and make a print. So we go and say, go to our Photoshop file, print, and we open up our print dialog box, and we see right off the bat we have to remember to say Photoshop manages color. It's like a trick question they put in there for us. By default, a lot of times it will say printer manages color. There is no case the printer manages the color. The printer has to be like, if you go back to the days of film, think of it as like a C41 or an E-processing E6 machine where it just does the same thing all the time. What you're doing is you're changing the variable that's going in. You don't want to change the process after the fact. So we say Photoshop manages the color. It knows what to do. Machine, you just do what you're supposed to do. Print it the same way all the time, and don't change things around. Then we have a profile. So we're going to convert from the whatever space, let's say color match RGB, to the specific profile of the printer. In this case, I'm looking at a Canon printer, and we're going to pick that printer as the profile, because we've already done the custom profiling. The ones that you can download from the internet are just generic profiles. They're not your printer. Every single printer, camera, monitor, they're yours. They're very, very specific. And the ones that you download or just get out of the box are to get you in the ballpark, but they're somebody else's profile. They're just characteristically correct. You need to have your specific profile if you want to have exact color, and you make one print each time, and it's perfect every time. So I'm picking, in this case, relative colorimetric. And then you go up to the print settings, and then you tell the printer exactly what you're doing. Am I doing it on matte paper, semi-gloss, or glossy paper? You know, what size is the paper? All that kind of stuff. That's the only thing that the printer has control over, so it knows what kind of ink to lay down. Now, when we look at our digital files, when we shoot our raw file, we are shooting with multiple levels of red, green, and blue. Only the very, very high-end digital backs can claim to shoot 16-bit, which can be technically by math up to 65,000 levels of information between black and white. Most of the cameras that the general public are using are going to be digital SLRs, high-end digital SLRs. They're going to shoot 14 bits per pixel, which means we're going to have over 16,000 tones between black and white. The older, if you have one that's several years old and you're still using and shoots raw, it's more likely going to be a 12-bit capture. And then in the end, what we turn over to our client or turn into using for my printer to print is going to be the final 8-bit file that has the best dynamic range possible. Now, when I say dynamic range, we're going to have the brighter the file that's exposed, the brighter it's exposed without overexposing, the more dynamic range we're going to have. Back in the day, started with back in the early 90s with scanning back captures, the first leaf digital backs, the multi-shot, we're shooting through a red, green, and blue filter. Then we went into single-shot captures and so forth, moving on. But no matter what type of capture you're doing, it's the 8-bit numbers that really, really count. And we look at those numbers. I did these tests the very first week of having my first digital camera, and they still hold today. Around 240 to 245 is where white with detail lives, and around 20 to 25 is where black detail lives. Doesn't mean you can't have a pure black or pure white. It just means that these numbers on this 256 levels of information, this is where white with detail disappears. So, but you may see a little on the screen, but generally once you hit once you go above 245 to 250, and from 250 to 255, you're basically wiped out all the detail. It's just going to be pure white. On the black side, you've got, below 20 on any kind of print, it's going to pretty much look like black felt. So you want to look at these numbers to make sure that you are getting the proper numbers here. And I use a chart like this that I've just made up using an ITA target, and I've made all these colors and numbers that I can pull up on my screen and reference that so that I know exactly where the numbers are. On the right side here, we see the most critical numbers: 0, pure black; 20 is black with detail; 40, I put 20 and 40 in there so I could see the difference and see that we are getting a difference in there. 128, like zone 5 gray; 245 white with detail; and 255 pure white. But unfortunately on Lightroom, the numbers are based on a 0 to 100 scale. So those same numbers of 20 was black with detail is actually 4.7 in Lightroom, or 245 white with details 96 in Lightroom. So we have to kind of keep bare of these numbers if you're going to be a Lightroom user and you want to look at these numbers. When we're working with our histogram, same difference. We're looking at exactly where does the white with detail fall, where is the black with detail fall. Be able to literally know and read the histogram. I think today's histogram is very much like what a Polaroid was to us back in the days of 4x5. We would take a meter reading, get us pretty darn close. We would measure the bellows, do all the things we had to do to figure out how that worked, plan our exposure, shoot the Polaroid. But when we looked at that Polaroid, we could tell if we needed to open up or close down for our 3 or 4 sheet bracket on Ektachrome film. And usually if you did a 3-shot, for me it was like open up a half stop, shoot the Polaroid, open up a quarter, and open up a quarter, maybe shoot a 4-sheet bracket, and I guarantee you I'd have that exposure right. No matter what the meter said, I went by the Polaroid. Today's histogram is very much like that. So when we have a proper exposure, and we're looking at these mountains, and you notice how the mountains exactly duplicate the histogram. I got that just right. And I realized that, and people said, does that histogram actually have anything to do with the mountain shape? I was, no, it really does. It just happens to be a coincidence. Now, when I have a really good exposure, I've got white-capped mountains, I've got shadows in the trees, I can see that I have a wide distribution of that information. But if I saw the histogram like this, and I noticed that the bottom third had no information, I could say, well, where are my dark shadows and trees are not showing up? And if everything is pushed down to the left, the same thing. Where are the white snow-capped mountains showing up? This is not right. So we need to be able to work with that, look at that histogram, and know that I can tell what that histogram should look like almost before I even take the photograph, to know that it's a properly rendered image. If we had a pure white and a pure black, this would be the correct histogram. Looks pretty strange, but that is the exact correct histogram for that image. If we had 6 bars, you notice how some of these lines don't come up as high as others. That's because some of the bars are wider. So you're looking at a pie chart, you're looking at a bar chart where the left side is 0, the right side is 255, and how high one of these lines come up just represents a certain numbered pixel, and how much of that image is represented in the shot. So if it's got more of this particular pixel than another, it's going to rise up higher than one that has lower amount of those pixels. If we had a 21-step wedge, that would be the right histogram. Or if we had a continuous tone from black to white, that would be the correct histogram. Now, job delivery with the end client. Whoever has their fingers on the disc is the one who's got the control of the picture. So you have to work with your client to make sure that the images that you're going to turn over are going to be fine. In the days of film, when we laid that 4x5 film or 8x10 film out of the light box and the client took their grease pencil and marked number 1, number 2, and put it in the bag, you were done. You were approved. No matter how it came out on press, nobody ever came back to you and said, this didn't look good, because they saw that transparency. Well, with digital, we are the ones to blame, according to them, because they never, there is no film to look at to verify, so everybody points their finger back to us. So it is to our advantage to work with our end client to get that stuff done so that they can actually get the result that you were getting. So when I'm doing a catalog, one of my major accounts is Mizuno Sports, and this is a very early photograph that I did because I put this in from my archives here. And when I was doing these early catalogs with them, I would take a representation of all the things I think that show the different colors and make one image that I would print out on my printer. Now, I would take that printer and that file and I would give it to the pre-press and say, I need you to print this out, because I have every picture. There's an 80, 90 page catalog here that I've been working on for the last month with all these variations, hundreds of different gloves. But if you get this image right, every image in that catalog will be exactly like it. If you get this image wrong, if you got it warm, you got it cold, you got a cyan cast, every image is going to be that way. So by doing this on the front end and they nail this one image, by the time they get to the real book, everything is dead perfect. And I've had this on very, very, very large projects. I produced, I didn't produce, sorry. I photographed a 400-page architectural book on historical homes of the Civil War in Marietta, Georgia, for the City Council, and in the Historical Society. And the whole thing was printed in China, and I had the profile from the Chinese press, but no color proof, and I just nailed this. Everything was done exactly by the books using the color checker and the whole 9 yards and the profiles. And when that book came back, there wasn't one page out of those 400, even though I never saw the proof, there wasn't one page that was out of whack. It was perfect. So color management really does work. What happens is once this thing goes to press, it gets separated, it goes onto a proofing machine where they do a one-up proof, the clients approve it, then it eventually goes on the big Heidelberg press. And it's these guys here, you're trying to make this guy's job easier, because if they can make this stuff come out left to right across that signature page without having to twist a lot of dials and go crazy, you are doing your job right. Everything is done by the book, and it really does work. On the very end of it, file management, we need to be thinking about backing up to CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays. I do use hard drives. I use the Drobo drives, and find that by having the safety of a drive, if Drobos will allow me, if they drop one drive ever does go bad, you just pull the drive out, put another drive in, and the stuff all replaces right back to it because it's a RAID unit. And but I do really, really appreciate the fact that I take the time to burn everything to disk. And now I bought the new Blu-ray XL format drives, which means I can do a 128 gigabyte disk, which means you can really get a lot out. I haven't done one quite that big, but standard Blu-ray now is 25 gigs on a disc. That's the equivalency of 33 CDs. So if you're thinking it's a hard time because it's so many, it's hard to keep burning CDs, do 33 of them at one time, and then we archive the files back to Extensive Portfolio. That's my electronic file cabinet that lets me know where every single file is. I use all my discs go into cases. They hold 300 in a case. Row one, there's 3 rows, and it's 100 per row. So I know if I need to find, if Extensive Portfolio says you need to go back and find this particular file that you shot last year in a catalog, it says it's on DVD or CD, 742. You know where 742 is? Right next to 743 and 741. I go right to that disc, pull that file, and I know exactly where it is. It's like you're doing your taxes. If you're going to put all your receipts in a big bowl and then try to figure it out in January, you're going to have a headache. If you take all your receipts on a weekly basis and the bookkeeper logs them into the computer, cost of goods sold, and lunch with a client, and more, all the things that you pay out, you log it into the computer as you go along. Come January, all she has to do is put in the last week, push a button, and your profit and loss report comes out, and you're January 2nd, you're ready to go to do your taxes and turn in. Same exact principle with CDs. Keep up with this stuff so you can keep it rolling. Let's go ahead and take a look at some actual, we've got about 10 or 10 minutes or so before I want to stop to answer any questions. I want to go ahead and look at how we approach jobs, and go looking from layout to finished piece here. Just look at some behind the scenes on a couple stories. I'm known primarily as a product photographer, but I really love when somebody gives me something that is outside of my comfort zone. We only get better at what we do by working outside of our comfort zone. So I'm not really much of a everyday people shooter, but one of my major art directors that I've worked with for 20 years had this campaign for Boy Scouts and said, you do such a great job with all the product photography. I know you can do this. There's no issue about whether because we of course do people, but not as much as we do product. So I took this on. It was basically scouting parents. It's Boy Scout and their parents doing stuff. I look at the layout, and here's a bald eagle in front of a Boy Scout and their parents, and of course the bald eagle is a symbol of Boy Scouts. I said, do I have to find the bald eagle? I said, no. We have the bald eagle for you. You're going to go to the Raptor Center in Auburn University. We got the Boy Scouts. Just show up with the lights and assistant, and you'll be doing fine. So we get down there and get the guy all set up. The bald eagle spreads his wings, and the kid goes running down the road. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't figure on the eagle being so frightening to the kid. So we said, well, we're not going to be able to put them in the shot. So of course, then becomes what we need to do is get this thing shot the best way we can. Of course, we shoot our color, our passport color checker, and we actually make sure that we have a really good profile for the outdoor feel here. Now, when we get our profile made, we can title it Outdoor Sun Profile so that we are all set with our Color Checker Passport profile locked into place. Now, I go ahead and shoot the mother and the child and the Cub Scout as if the eagle is there. Of course, the eagle's not really there. You can see maybe in the last picture there's one where the eagle's there just for scale. But generally, he was much better when the eagle was not in the photograph. So once we have all that, the curator of the place was very upset at the fact the eagle had a broken beak and almost wouldn't let me shoot him and insisted I had to shoot the golden eagle. I told him that I have eagles that I've shot from Homer, Alaska to the Tampa Zoo. I got lots and lots of eagles. I will give him a completely new head job, nose job, before anything happens here. Replace his whole head here. So we come back to the studio and we write what's called a strategy map. We sort of put everything in place with the art director here. I can sit there, this is where the eagle's going to go, these are the notes that I need. I put this on a separate layer so then the art director can go on their merry way and let me do my work in privacy and get everything done so I don't have to have somebody over my shoulder watching every little move I make and then set up everything on an FTP site for them to look at. So once everything's done, we change the color of the pants, put in the eagle, all that fun stuff, and this is how the final piece worked. Now the part of this, the reason I've shown this is trying to make a campaign to have a continuity as you're looking. I like this image. This is the very first image I shot on the set before I was having anybody pose. And of course I shot for another half an hour and shot another 100 shots, but the one they ended up using was the one they weren't even posing for when I was just testing the camera to see if it was going to fire or not. So you never know how these things are going to work out, so keep all the files. We started doing the layouts here with the Pinewood Derby track. And of course, we're trying to make a continuity of look between where the layouts look. And the point here is the color management is so critical. And again, using the Wacom technology, having to cut things out and colorize. They said I don't like the color of his shirt. You know, I do a lot of clipping paths, and doing the clipping paths both either with the pen tool on my tablet and on the Cintiq speeds things up incredibly, because what is Photoshop really about in the end? It's about separating something from something else. I want to separate A from B so that I can do something to A and not affect B, but I need to do it in a quick manner. I need to have it look realistic. The transitional edges between A and B have to have the same type of focusing and transition as the rest of the photograph. And by using my pen tool, I'm able to really get that right. So we go back, and this is all shot over a 3 or 4 week period. And it just allows me to try to keep these things done with a really nice clean continuity. The color management and being able to work on these files in the studio to get them clean and right is just a big part of the clients coming back every time. You know, the secret of the whole thing was, you know, people say the photography business is tough, everybody's taking pictures, everybody's, you know, that's fine, everybody can be taking pictures and it's great. Photography is a great thing to be involved with. But if you're in the business of photography, the way to keep your business running is repeat customers, keeping those few customers that you work with so happy that they have no way they'll ever look for anybody else. That's an important part. A lot of the agency type layouts come in very, very simple drawings. Here it is, a double-page spread. They said, I want a lollipop to look like a globe, but it can't look more like a lollipop than a globe, or more like a globe than a lollipop. And that's exactly the way they said it. So I said, you know, so you end up shooting a lollipop, then shooting a globe, and superimpose it, do a little selective focus after the fact, create the band, and the background is actually made up. This is actually a fairly older ad. I used back when I was doing a 3-shot camera, and this is a really, really close up to the television set with the camera lens about 1 inch away from the screen, focused macro right on the TV set, and I'm actually changing channels between the red, green, and blue exposures and getting some really cool effects. And that allowed me to take it on to some other types of ads. This, again, an older ad because you can see by the type of monitor we're using. This is for a cover of a video magazine where they wanted the conversion of analog color space to digital color space. And back then, this is quite a lot of layers. This is back when 64 megs of RAM cost $4,000. It was a lot of money. And I remember having to get an extra 64 megs of RAM in there because the computer just couldn't handle it. It's had literally, by the time it was done, it was upwards of over 200 images inside this photograph. All these little screens and squares are actually individual photographs with from the television set. A lot of times you're working as a partner with your art director trying to figure out how do you accomplish this. Middle of winter, Ultra Swim is a shower gel that swimmers use to get the chlorine off their skin. They want this kid sort of bouncing around at the edge of the pool pretending he's having fun, having a picture taken by his mom. And of course, in the middle of winter, is it easier to put them in an indoor pool, or is it better to just shoot a pool and shoot them individually? Well, we ended up just shooting the pool, getting it the way I wanted it, and shot the guy in the studio and shot the bottle separate and basically put it together and gave it a little bit of a black line edge around it to make it look like he was moving a little bit. And it solves the problems quickly, and you're not having to work on trying to get this guy right sitting in a pool for half an hour getting the shot done correctly. When I did this shot here for Physoderm, I had never done a splash picture before. Again, working outside of my comfort zone. But because I knew being able to do it digitally, I had about $35 in supplies I purchased at Home Depot, some tubing, and made a little, I used one of my older darkroom trays, put some black plexi in it, set it up, and glued everything to the bottom and blew the water through the tubes. But I didn't have to get one perfect photograph. Instead, I could shoot multiple pictures. In the right corner be picture 12, and the left corner is picture 16, and the middle is picture 9. And I could just put the best parts of the splashes, because the splashes would never be the same each time. Then I also photographed one set of bottles all by themselves, just nicely spritzed, and basically put them in at the very end. And although it took more shots than just shooting one photograph, it had much more control. So here again, I'm using the pen tool on the Wacom to outline the bottles and to make perfect selections. Having color management is critical, because all the images have to be exactly the same way. So you're going to have a lockdown, custom white balance, custom profile, custom everything, because you just can't use auto. Auto is not going to handle it for us. Here's a cover for an office supply catalog. Give me the layout. And he said, they want these products to look like drawings. So I said, had to make the drawing first, and then, no. So what, should I make the drawing first or shoot the products first and have the drawing made? Thought if I shot the products first, made a print, and showed them exactly how the drawing had to be, how easy is it going to be for them then just to draw it, and then just easily add a layer mask and just swoosh those guys in. And it was such a simple thing, but the effect was exactly correct, because we pre-thought out exactly the right order in which to do everything. Each of those items was shot individually, composed on one image, given to the artist, let the artist draw it out, and then merge the two together. This is a campaign that I recently did for Good Samaritan. They make insurance for RV people, RV owners, that when they're out worrying about, the concept was, you're out there on the beautiful trip, and all you can do is think about that new engine that's costing you $21,000 to put in the RV because you broke down while you're out in the field. Well, the whole campaign is about imagining these scenarios with your vehicle. So here we have an engine growing out of the mountains and so forth. Mostly, I was very much hoping I would travel around the country doing all these shots individually, but unfortunately it ended up being a lot of purchased stock photography by the client, and my job was to put everything together believably. Here's an RV shot in one place. The RV, the grass, the sign, the road, the brick wall, the mountains are made up of 3 or 4 different mountain sets, and the engine was a custom illustration out of Europe we had to get of the actual engine and put it in there. And then of course the sky is a whole another shot again. So, but it allows me to control and assemble all the things that the client is going to need. Here we have water faucet in the woods. Shoot the faucet in the studio, shoot the water, and then bring in a couple different pieces, that we all have to put this together. This one I thought was a real challenging one, because it had a drive shaft and a dock, and the drive shaft and the dock are obviously not the same scale. So what do? Do you make a dock? Do you shoot the dock and try to find a drive shaft and try to shoot the scale together? So we realized the best thing to do is buy a drive shaft and build a miniature dock to scale by Model Builder, and then literally every sailboat and person and tree and whatever all had to be brought in individually. So this is the way it ended up turning out in the end. The drive shaft, the thing was so heavy that we had to shoot it actually in the actual prop builder's facilities, because he built us a pool to shoot it in and built the dock and filled it up with water for us and let us shoot the image right here so that we could get this particular image here in the end. And of course, the shadows are very important. Being able to cut each of these people out with the pin tool and on the tablet is going to be a big difference. All these were like, trying to work on the Cintiq, and really, you want to really feel creative, get on a Cintiq when you go to the trade show, get on a Cintiq, and I swear your creative juices jump up like 100% when you're working like that, because you feel like you're so in control here. Last one here, just looking at a series of layouts for Rubbermaid Commercial. We're shooting a series of new scales, and this is the way typical layouts come when they really actually have a lot of information. So we're shooting people, we're going to shoot in a professional kitchen, and shooting, of course, someone in the studio, and all the numbers were shot as, and the scales were shot as separate items and then dropped in. Consistency in the tables, consistency in the lighting for the models, all tie into color management being proper. Chrome is so important; it's got to look neutral. So we're all set there. Basically, you can see a lot more of my work in my blog at www.divitalephotography.com. I have a blog entitled The Digital Imaging Tune-Up Clinic. Right now, we're on the Facebook blog network, which is the largest blog network in the world. And under the keywords of Photoshop, digital imaging, and digital photography, I have the highest amount of readership in the world. So I'd love for you to become a follower and keep my numbers up, because I come to the top. If you search under them for Photoshop, you'll see me as the first blog. I do put up lots of tutorials. I have some current tutorials on shooting with the Cam Ranger, on shooting with tilt-shift lenses, things like that. This up there right now, so please take a look at that when you can. And also, if a lot of the things I do with Wacom and X-Rite are in the movies that I make for Kelby Training. So by chance, if you are a Kelby Training subscriber, which I think is one of the greatest ways to get training from so many incredible photographers on every subject, I have about 8 hours of commercial shooting stuff up there that shows you how we use this stuff in the field. So I'm going to open this thing back up to Brenda to let me know. I think we're really right on target for our time-wise, so I'd like to find out if we actually have any questions come through that we can answer.
Whew, yes, we do. That's
now I'll take a breath.
Little bit like drinking from a fire hose there. That was really fantastic. And we've had very active questions in the background. So we've answered a lot of those questions, those just purely technical questions, but I've got a few for you, and we'll go through them just as quickly as we have. We've got about 6, 7, 8, something like that. So Jim says, you said color match RGB. Did you mean web coat swap version 2? He was just a little bit confused on that color match RGB.
In the actual setup of the color space, we're talking about the color space. We're talking about Adobe 1998, Pro Photo RGB, sRGB, or color match RGB. Color match RGB is a color space. You'll find it, and sometimes it's not listed by default in Lightroom. You have to actually put it back in. Is one of those color spaces that is sort of fading away from popularity, but it is the one that works the best for CMYK. And when we're talking about the general setup of the colors management color space, it's North American Pre-Press 2. That is what we're talking about, because I think the original one is this North American, and this is North American, I think it's called North American Pre-Press 2, the one I had on the slide there, is going to be where you start out.
Okay, great. Now, when you print black and white, do you still let Photoshop manage your colors and
always
profile?
Always, and I print black and white in color. I never print black and white and just say like, take the image, or like print just black and white. It's literally a color image. It's an RGB image, and I'm printing with all the colors in there to get the most dramatic part of the black and white. But color management in getting those tones, 0 being pure black, 20 being black with detail, 128 being zone 5 middle gray, 245 being white with detail, and 255 being pure white. Those numbers apply every bit as much in black and white as they do in color.
Okay. Now you work in 16-bit. There was a question about 16-bit versus 8-bit.
Yes, I do all my work as much as I can in 16-bit. When I bring in a file from Adobe Camera Raw, a lot of times, unless I'm doing some kind of demo stuff, which I'm just using low-end JPEGs for demonstration purposes, but in the real work, my workflow is going to be shoot on the workstation. The files are left on that workstation as we're shot, and then or move the copy over to my main workstation, which is either working with a tablet on an ESO monitor that's calibrated, or working on the Wacom Cintiq 24-inch HD. Once I bring the images over there, I'm bringing them in 16-bit. I do any adjustments. I do the pass. I do all that work on them and keep them 16-bit until it's ready for delivery to the client, in which then I have a batch action, which I just convert the 16-bit files down to 8-bit to the client folder that I then will post on an FTP site or burn to a disk. But I try to stay in 16-bit as long as possible. There's very few things that don't work in 16-bit, and it's more forgiving if I have to do any radical changes. And I do a lot of prototype work, so I'm doing a lot of changing colors. I'm turning black things into white and white things into black, and by having it in 16-bit, I'm doing the least amount of damage to all that as I manipulate these colors.
Great. Now we got a couple of questions here that are related. What brand of DVDs do you use, and what is the brand of the CD storage boxes that you showed?
Good question. The storage CD boxes, I can't find them anymore, so I've changed. But I get those over at at an Office Depot. Those are just standard. Office Depot has very good storage boxes for things like that, and they're made for the size of CDs. I wish I could say I know the exact brand because the labels are torn off, and I can't find. I've had to change to a little bit different size. It holds a little bit different number because I can't find those anymore. But that's where they're coming from. Is basically Office Product Store. And the brand of CDs, I get asked that all the time. I just use very, very name brand stuff. I tend not to use any brand that I've not heard of. I use TDK. I use Sony's. I'm looking over here. I use a lot of Verbatim. The major brands, and I buy them. Bulk. I buy bulks of 100 at a time. Right now, I'm primarily doing as much as I can on Blu-ray, just because when I'm doing a large, say if I'm doing a Mizuno catalog, it could be 80, 90 gigabytes easy at the end of the job with all the raw files and layered files and everything that you have to save along the way, and putting that on on 5 or 6 DVDs. It gets to be you have to keep separating everything. So by getting it into like 3 Blu-rays, it's a lot easier to control and burn. I always burn 2 copies, A and a B, and the A, I verify both of them, and I put them in Extensions Portfolio, and then 1 copy is stored offsite. I've actually lived in 2 locations. I live in Atlanta and live in Santa Barbara, so I can store them in different locations and have an extra emergency set, and that way I can pull the files up for anybody I need. But key thing is, you got to have more than just your hard drive. The hard drive, I'm not putting down hard drives. Hard drives are important, and having multiple hard drives. I have terabytes upon terabytes of hard drive space, but mostly it's empty, and the computer is so happy when it has all this empty space because mostly I try to burn all this stuff off and archive it away. I do not need to keep a 5-year-old shoe catalog on my hard drive where I can access it every day, but I do need to have it in life. I can't, because I basically bill the client an archiving fee on every job so that I am taking care of their files. Hopefully that answers the question there.
And Extensis is what you use to catalog them?
Extensis Portfolio. Unfortunately, if you've told me that I could only have 2 pieces of software on my computer, I would say, sorry, nothing else but the operating system and 2 pieces of software. So what couldn't live without? Absolutely I could not live without my Photoshop. And I couldn't live without Extensis Portfolio, because Extensis Portfolio is my electronic file cabinet. I have over 1 million files on Extensis Portfolio, and literally a client can call up and say, Jim, we're at the press, and this has actually happened. Jim, we're at the press, we're having a pickup image, which means an image that we've shot years before that we have to use again today in a later book. We can't find that image. We don't know where it is. Is there any chance you still have that picture from 4 years ago? And I said, what's the name of the product name? I type it into Extensis Portfolio, I grab the disk, I make a JPEG, I send it to them, and that happened as fast as I said it, and they say, oh my God, I don't know how you did that. They just can't believe that you can keep track of your files like that. And it's an art to that. I name every file what it is by client. So it's in a folder by client. So in the case of Mizuno Baseball 2013, and inside there is going to be baseball gloves, catcher's equipment, shoes, apparel, and every file is named either with a product name. It's like manufactured number that they've given me so that they can say, Jim, we're looking for the 450-652-1914. I type that in, I go right to that exact file. It's an art to doing it, and it's hard to start late in life if you already got 1 million files that you haven't archived. But start now, and you will catch up, and you will find yourself in total control of your imagery.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to save a client like that but once, and they come back to you forever.
I have to say that they worship the ground you're on. They can't believe it. They said, I can't even find last week's lunch receipts. How did you find a file from 3 years ago? That's usually their comment when you do that, and it happens a lot. Especially with catalog photography, because I have to recolorize images to add new colors. A lot of the clothing that I shoot, I only get 1 prototype copy in, say, royal blue, and I have to make 14 other colors out of it, anything from white to black. And they may say, that's fine, but next year they may come back and say, we need you to pull XYZ file, and we need to add purple and shocking pink to that lineup. So you have to go right back to that file. You can't go back looking through file cabinets and pages. You have to just type in the computer, and the computer tells you exactly where to go find that.
That's awesome. Now, do you store DNG files or RAW files? What
I
format?
tell you about my think on that. Because of the amount of files I have to shoot, the DNG format has become very, very good for me. Smaller projects, a lot of times I'll just save it in the proprietary file, but I don't like the XMP data being a separate file. The beauty of the DNG is the XMP data that's giving the directions to the file is built in. So I really, right now, I'm doing a conversion to DNG on large catalog shoots. I'll get them all named and converted to DNG and processed in camera raw before I build out the first TIFF to start doing any other work on it. So that keeps if I come back from Europe and I had 3,000 pictures I took in Italy, I don't want to have 6,000 files. If I do that way, I can do Italy 2013 0001 through 3000 and basically have just one raw file as a DNG. Keeps things a lot simpler.
Yeah. So now here's a question. This is an interesting question. I think I know the answer to, but I'll be interested in the answer myself. Do you color manage when you're talking about making profiles and how you do your color management? Is there anything different about your workflow from shooting outside to shooting inside in the studio?
Not really, because it's the same color. You're using the same kind of camera. If you saw, I do have an outdoor sunshine profile versus an indoor strobe profile. I don't really know, and it is a little different. And sometimes I use the outside sunshine profile when I'm doing an indoor shot. It all depends on the look that I want to get. I shot the particular card for the outdoor in bright sunlight because I figured the colors are getting that direct sun, noontime sun coming right down on that chart on the passport, and I thought that was going to be good for being out in sun. If you really want to get crazy, you would probably want a profile for cloudy day, one for sunshine, one for tungsten, one for strobe, and have 4 different profiles made for your camera. You can get away with one controlled profile and be fine. And I find that it just saves. It's just really interesting how all the things that you would do to your file to make it look right are done before you touch the dial, because it's got the right amount of contrast. It's got the right amount of fidelity to the color because it's already pre-measured it and written the exact translation. So when it comes from the raw data to the TIFF file or the Photoshop file, you've got everything in place right from the get. And then you just move the sliders ever so slightly. It's like adding salt and pepper to taste. It's whatever looks good. But we are visual artists. What we see on the screen controls what we do. So having the most important part is having that monitor profiled, and by having the camera and the printer on both sides of that means that the input's coming profiled, my visual point of reference that I make my decisions on is profiled, and having a good monitor. Don't be cheap with monitors, things like that. Just get yourself a really, really good monitor, get it custom profiled, and you will find that what you see is what you get once you apply the profiles to the printing side. You will get it first time. I did a couple of shows in the last year. I had an entire floor of the Marietta Museum to do a show relating to the book, and I had a show at the Art Institute of Atlanta's gallery during the Atlanta Celebrates Photography Month last year, and every single case, every print that I made were 30 by 40s on my Canon printer. Every single one was printed one time. I never once made a second print by saying, gee, this one looks a little, maybe I can make it a little brighter, a little darker. I never made a print a second time. And I was just so pleased with that and didn't realize until I was done that it was like there are no seconds of anything. So if you do it that way, it's right the first time every time, saves a bunch of money. And you know how ink is expensive, so we want to get that right the first time.
All right, we're really at close time right now, but I got one more question for you. What brand of Blu-ray player burner do you use?
If you're on a Mac, some of them don't work. If you're looking for a little tiny portable one, I've got a couple of portable ones of an LG and the one a Samsung that works very well. But the Blu-ray XL drive, the ones I'm using are the C drives, and
Okay.
they work. They're plug and play. No software needed. They come with software for a PC, but if you're on a Mac, you plug them in, and it works perfectly fine with Toast. And you see your regular drive that you have, and you see the external drive, and you just pick which drive you want to burn to. And I find no errors. I see that I've not had to throw out one Blu-ray for lack of error, but I do always burn 2 to be sure.
That's great. Jim, we just can't thank you enough. Thank you to Wacom for co-sponsoring this webinar. We've had so many nice comments about this being a very good color management and workflow seminar, and people have really enjoyed it. And so we thank you all for coming. We thank Jim. We thank Wacom. And you all have a great rest of the day. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.